right, welcome back into the podcast, and I got on my guy Jonah Cerone. He is back in the building. Last time we had him on for some March Madness, and this guy, he's my guy when it comes to college sports. So all we talk about, really, whenever we're together, is Big Ten anything, Big Ten anything. So we're gonna talk about some Big Ten football today. So Jonah, thank you so much for coming on the show,
Hey,
man.
it's good to be back. Last time I was here, we were talking some bracketology, which it didn't age well for people who listen to that podcast. It did not age well. It was impressively bad if you followed our advice. But
Yeah,
I'm looking
it
to
wasn't
bounce
great.
back podcast.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
coming to
hopefully,
this with a chip on my shoulder. I'd say that.
yeah, hopefully our thoughts on this are a little better. Hopefully it
Yeah,
ages just a
yeah,
little bit better.
yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it. So, we had some great games this weekend, and I mean, I talked
Yep.
about some of the other stuff. I talked about Texas, Alabama, but let's get into some Big Ten action. And I
Sure.
wanted to talk about Iowa. Again, I talked about it with you on bracketology. We talked about how big of an
Uh,
Iowa fan you are. So,
yes, sir.
you're probably all in on this Iowa football team. So, talk to me about what you've seen from Iowa so far this year, and should we take them seriously?
For sure. Coming into this year, I thought this is the most excited I've ever been for an Iowa team. And they've had some years where they were coming into the season looking like they're going to be pretty good. So far, they've disappointed me, but at the same time, I really still like them as a top 25 team. The main thing from last year is their defense took a major step down, or maybe not major, but definitely took a step down from that elite level to probably a very good level. They lost, obviously, as you know, we got a lot of Lions fans in here. They lost Jack Campbell to the Lions, and along with their other linebacker, Seth Benson, to the Broncos. So that's really what's been hurting them is losing that linebacker unit. And then they also lost their best D lineman, Noah Shannon, to this gambling investigation they have going on. But their defense is looking good. Their offense took a huge step forward, but they still can't run the ball. And it's still, I mean, they still can't get 25 points. If you've heard about the 25-point total for
Yeah.
Brian Ferentz. It's, but I think overall as a team, they are better than last year. And we'll get into this a little more later, but they're my favorites to win the West still.
Yeah, I mean, kind of going on to that point, Iowa starting out the year 2-0. They got a big win against Iowa State this
Yep.
week. And then they played Utah State first week, won that game 24-14, and then beating Iowa
Yep.
State this week 20-13. This is a huge rivalry. So huge rivalry win this week. They didn't look the greatest. This I was very weird in the sense like their offense just can't score. Like you were talking about, like that 25 points per game thing. It's the weirdest thing that I think I've ever seen. Like it's shocking that it's public that the
Yeah.
coordinator, like everybody knows that he has to score 25 points. And that's just not the Iowa system. It isn't. So it's shocking to
Yeah.
me. It's weird. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
talk to me about that a little.
So the 25-point thing stems from, I don't have the exact numbers on me, but there's some crazy stat about when Iowa scores 25 points, they're like 40, like 8-2 or something crazy. So
That's
that's
crazy.
that's where this like stemmed from. Like so Brian Ferentz, obviously son of the head coach, um, he was the worst offense coordinator in the country last year, arguably the year before too. They had the worst offense in the country last year. I think the 120th worst the year before that. But he kept his job, and then so sort of is like the thing for fans to maybe chill out a little bit, I guess, was they put in this 25-point clause where he has to score 25 points a game to keep his job, counting defensive points as well, but which is huge for him. But so far he's been short both games, so
Yeah.
he's got some work to do.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at this offense this year, I
Yeah.
actually think I mean, this is way better than having Spencer Petras as your quarterback,
Oh,
having Cade McNamara as your quarterback.
he
I
throws it
mean,
to the right team. Yeah.
exactly. It's like night and day. Like this guy looks so much better. He's so much more poised and confident. But looking at the box score in this one especially, and again, I know these Iowa State games are always weird, but
Yeah.
I don't think like being a Michigan fan and seeing Cade McNamara, I don't think I've ever seen a stat line where he goes 12 for 22, 123 yards, zero touchdowns, one interception, and they still win the game. Like that's just a little shocking to me, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, for sure. I mean, the main thing about Iowa's offense is it's centered off of the run game and then play action. And then right now we have two problems. One, they can't run the ball, which there's there's different reasons for that. Some people say it's because they use a zone blocking system, which hasn't been working well in college in recent years. Um, but then also you add on to that, so they can't run the ball well, which already hurts their play action. And then Cade has he's got a thigh injury right now where they don't want him rolling out.
Okay.
So now you see Iowa almost coming out of the spread sometimes, which is not their
Yeah.
game. And then when they line up and just run the ball normally, that also isn't working with the fullback and the Iowa style running game. So essentially nothing's working. It's just that when a guy is open, Cade can hit him, where Petras couldn't last year. Is because I mean, you look at their offensive stats from this year compared to last year. Yes, they are still bad this year, but last year at this point in the season, they had, I believe, 10 offensive points in two games combined. So
Sheesh. Yeah.
even though they're not hitting their 25-point mark, it's a huge change on offense nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot easier to be way more dynamic when you have that quarterback. And Iowa has not had that quarterback. That's kind of been the story with Iowa.
Yeah.
It's been the thing they've been missing. So it's huge to have a guy like Cade. And I mean, even though this defense isn't as good as it was last year, they're still making some plays. Like they had a solid game this year. They made it really tough for Iowa State. Again, Iowa State is no juggernaut. I mean, they're not going to be
Right.
great in the Big 12. And this quarterback did not impress me. He ended up the game 23 for 44, 203, one touchdown, one interception. He wasn't great throughout this whole game. So,
Right.
I mean, looking at it that way, it's like Iowa, it's impressive. They got the job done, they got the win. But again,
Yeah.
I'm going to need to see just a little more improvement before I'm saying, okay, this is the clear favorite out of the West. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. All right. So that can kind of lead us into, I think what a lot of people thought about the Big Ten West when we were going into it was this is going to be a race between Iowa and Wisconsin. I think those
I
are the
agree.
two teams that a lot of people kind of just got their eyes on and were like,
Yeah.
okay, these are the two teams to really look out for. Some people might be going, oh, maybe like a little Minnesota or something crazy, like Purdue could come back and do this. Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
tier
No, so,
one would definitely be Wisconsin, Iowa. So Wisconsin, they actually lost in week 2. They played at
right.
Washington State in a really good game, 31-22. Um, this was a very interesting game. Washington State is very good. They just came
They're a
into the
good team.
rankings now. Yeah, like tough team, and they've
They
always
beat them
had.
last year too.
Yes, yes, that's very
Yeah.
true. They always have a very dynamic quarterback, and Cameron Ward in this game was fantastic. Went
Mhm.
28 for 32, 212 yards, two touchdowns, and he ran the ball for 43 yards, which very good game for him. And Washington State's just so dynamic with their passing, and that kind of just lit up Wisconsin's defense. Wisconsin's defense, I really like them. They're physical, they're tough, and they do kind of the same thing on the offensive side of the ball. I really like their running back, Braylon Allen. I think he's one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. He's sensational. And then Tanner Mordecai, he struggled week 1. So a lot of people were like, ooh, I don't know if Wisconsin is going to be the team. In this game, looked better. 25 for 40, 278, a touchdown. Like looked better. So if you're looking at Wisconsin, it's like, okay, you lost a very tough road game at a very good Pac-12 team. That's tough. But I don't know if it's like bad enough to where you're like, oh, they're not going to be competing for the West. What do you think it means for their future?
I think they're certainly competing for the West. I think Iowa and Wisconsin are. I mean, they're very similar teams. I'd say they're both around probably like 25th in the country.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I think Wisconsin's a little more balanced, but Iowa has a better defense this year. Uh, Wisconsin, and then the other thing I'd say about Wisconsin is first year coaches almost never do well in the Big Ten. You could
Yeah.
maybe throw out a Ryan Day, but for Ohio State standards, he really didn't have a good first year either. So I think that's probably going to hold them back. It's going to be a little more of a building year. They brought in all these new guys from the portal. They're still going to be trying to figure out how to click. I think they're going to lose a game or two early in the Big Ten, and that's really going to end up putting Iowa over them. Um, yeah, I mean we'll see. They have a solid run game and a solid passing game, and solid like they're just an all around solid team. Where Iowa has a very good defense and a developing offense, so that has some potential, I'd say.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense that you'd be on the Iowa side. Again, a little bit of bias there, but that's okay, you know.
Maybe, maybe.
I'm actually on the Wisconsin side, but I do see your point, like looking at their schedule coming up. Their first Big Ten game is at Purdue, night game. Like that's a
Right.
tough game. It is. Purdue's
Yeah.
a tough environment. I was just at their game against Fresno State. They got a really good student section. It's a tough environment, especially a late game from what I've heard. Unbelievable. Penn State barely snuck out of that game last year in that tough
Yeah.
environment. So I think that's a very tough way to open up. Some of their other tough games in the Big Ten, home against Iowa. That game is going to be huge. It's so huge. That'll
They'll probably
probably
decide the West. Probably
Yes,
decide the
yes,
West.
I agree with that statement 100% because Iowa and Wisconsin, they're both playing one of the juggernauts in the Big Ten East, which is Penn
Right.
State or Ohio State or Michigan. I don't think either of them
Right.
play Michigan, but I was playing Penn State,
Penn State
and
week 4, I believe. So that'll be
yeah,
right out the gate.
yeah, and then Wisconsin's playing Ohio State week 7 at home.
Yeah.
So that again, both of them will be interesting. Uh, but that Iowa game, that's huge. You know, flat out huge. Looking at the
Yeah.
rest of the schedule though, like, and this is the same with Iowa. Other than those games, it's
Not
not
much. Yeah.
much. It's all winnable. It's all very winnable. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where these two teams land. And
Yeah.
they're so similar. You know, it's kind of
Yeah, I
crazy.
think I think they're both looking at this as like a major opportunity, or maybe their last opportunity with the Big Ten West not being here next year. Like this is their chance to have like the easiest road they're going to have in probably the next decade to the Big Ten championship, and then the Big Ten championship. I mean, realistically, you're one game away from playoffs, right?
Yep.
So like for one of these programs, I mean, this is the best shot they're going to get in the foreseeable future at something that big. So I think they're both looking at this year as like we got to win now type thing.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So, you're rolling with Iowa and I'm rolling with
I
Wisconsin.
you know it, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
like
Kate McNamara's experience wins that game.
that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I like that you're picking the experience. With Wisconsin, man, I just think there's just so many options on this team. Like, I love Tanner Mordecai. I think he's a great quarterback. He's just calm, composed.
Hmm.
Can really do his thing. And if Wisconsin gets their running game going, it's so tough
Yeah,
to stop. It really is. Like they got
yeah.
two running backs that are sensational.
Two
Like
very good running
look,
backs. Yeah,
looking at the Buffalo game, and this is why I got so excited about Wisconsin. Like immediately, I'm gonna just say the running back stats, both of them, and you're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh!" But Braylon Allen had 17 carries, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then their other running back, Ches. I'm not gonna say his name right, but it's Ches Mulase, I think. But he had 13 carries, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns. So that's 300 yards between the two.
to
Like
put
these
that in
guys,
perspective, I think that's more than Iowa's had running the ball both games combined.
exactly. Like these
When
guys
you're
can
comparing
run the
numbers, yeah,
football. And
yeah,
what Washington State did to them was they took Braylon Allen out of the game, who's one of the most like valuable pieces in in the Big Ten, I think, arguably, because I think he's one of the best running backs there, other than a Blake Corum or a Nicholas Singleton or Katron Allen. I think those guys are otherworldly, but Braylon Allen's right there. He's close, you know, he's knocking on that door. So looking at it that way, it's like, okay, now we see this is a way to be able to get under Wisconsin's skin and stopping the run. I just don't know if there's any team in the Big Ten West that could do that, you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
And,
I mean,
I disagree. I think
okay,
Iowa
okay.
always gets better as the season goes on. That's how they've always been. So I think their defense is going to be clicking at a level. Although it's been good so far, I think it's going to be clicking at a whole nother level by the end of the season when that matchup's coming around. And then I think Cade McNamara, Big Ten champion, he's been in the playoffs. I think he goes in there, he throws 2 touchdowns, gets a field goal, he wins 17-14 would be my guess.
Yep. Yep, the Iowa style win. That would be
Exactly. Yeah.
crazy. It's gonna be a crazy game. I'm very
Right.
excited. That's gonna be a fun game, and we'll definitely be texting each other throughout that game.
For
So,
sure.
let's get to some of the other Big Ten West games. Well, some of the other Big Ten games, kind of to talk about. One of the teams that was kind of knocking on the door in the Big Ten West, but won't be this year, was Illinois. They
Right.
lost their game on Friday night to Kansas, and didn't look great doing it. I talked about it last week that I was a little nervous about them. They won on a game-winning field goal to Toledo the week before, and then going to Kansas, and they lost. And Kansas starting quarterback didn't even play in this game. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit rough looking at it that way. Or actually, he did play. He was back this game. Okay, that's a little
Okay.
better. That makes me feel a little better. But I mean, still losing this game, it's a little rough because Kansas is going to be a middle of the road team in the Big 12. So looking at it that way, it's like, I just don't think Illinois is going to be that team that they were last year knocking on the door. So I have them going down a level a little bit.
I agree. They don't. They
Yeah,
don't have the defense they had last year, along with losing their
exactly.
coordinator. That's.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
Ryan
what made them
Walters
so
going to
bad. Right.
Ryan Walters going to Purdue. So I mean, tough loss, and yeah, I just don't see them being that team. That leads into another team that's kind of knocking on the door, but I don't think it's there yet, and that's Minnesota. Minnesota won their game against Eastern Michigan 25-6. I think you'd expect them to win a little bit more, but by more
Yeah.
points. But again, I talked about it last week a little bit on both podcasts, on the Purdue podcast and the week one reactions. But Minnesota's going from a running style to a passing style. They're switching their
Okay.
offense completely this year with PJ Fleck. So that transition can be tough to start. And they actually kind of like changed completely back to a run style. So I think they're still trying to figure out what their offense
Interesting.
is because they threw the ball 45 times against Nebraska last week. And then they were
Hmm.
like, wait, we're going to throw it 15 times against Eastern. And they
Interesting.
ran it with Darius Taylor 33 times and he went for 193 yards.
Yeah.
So it's like,
They
I
had
don't think
they
they
had an
know what their
incredible run
offense
game
is.
this year.
Exactly. They had Mo Ibrahim, who was
Right.
fantastic last year, one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. So I don't know if they know what they're going to be yet, and it's tough to predict those kind of teams. So that's
Right.
why I have Minnesota winning a lot of games, but I do think teams like Iowa and Wisconsin can handle them. Do you agree with that?
I'd agree. I'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely Minnesota is one of those teams, and I think PJ Fleck's a really good coach. I just don't know if they're going to be taking that next step. And then I do want to talk about Nebraska because you are a Nebraska guy, and Minnesota played them in a very close game week one, but Nebraska it was kind of rough this week. Colorado kind of took them and threw them down the curb pretty much. I mean, it was rough. So talk to me a little bit about what you've seen from Nebraska so far this
Yeah.
year.
I mean, for the most part, it's been more of the same. You come out week one, you see the one possession loss. No one's been better at it in the country the past 4 years now than Nebraska. So another one possession loss there. Then you go to Colorado. I actually think their defense looked really impressive in the first half.
I
If you
agree.
watched that game, it was, I mean, they almost shocked. I think at the first half, Colorado was shocked. Like, it was almost
Hmm.
sort of like a welcome to the Big Ten thing. And then the wheels just fell off second half. They don't have a set quarterback really. They don't have a good option there. Their offense is just, I mean, it's looking bad. And then it's not like Iowa where you have an elite defense. Their defense is, up and down. So I don't I don't see them making a bowl game this year. I think it's going to be another rebuilding year, if you want to call it that, for them. Maybe 4 wins. We'll see. I like Matt Rule as a coach, but it's going to take a couple years there.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Matt Rule a little bit, it was the Panthers coach last year, and
Right.
he in college is known for rebuilding. He's very good at rebuilding teams, but the first year is always a process. It just is. When he was at Temple, they won one game their first year,
Mhm.
and then next year they win 9 games. The next year they win 11 games. That's how it worked at Temple. Then he went over to Baylor. They won one game their first year. Next year, 9 wins. The other one, 11 wins. That's how it is. It's his process. That's how it goes. So if you're a Nebraska fan, You just got to be patient. It's the truth. And again, Scott Frost, a lot of people liked the hire when it came in, and he didn't. He didn't come through. And again, with Nebraska, you're going to see a lot of close losses. That Minnesota loss was just really tough because Minnesota. Exactly. I mean, Minnesota, again, like we were talking about, is still trying to figure out their offensive identity, so you could have won that game. And Jeff Sims as a quarterback, he's just not very good. He really isn't.
He can run the ball, but his passing, I mean, I think he had like 4 turnovers against Colorado.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was, I think after like the third, that's really when their defense sort of just fell apart. Like they were sort of in the offense that first half, and then it just all went downhill second half, and the first half to second half.
Yeah, and I mean, like talking about the defense has been really good, like you were saying. Against Minnesota, really good. Only 13 points allowed. And then against Colorado in the first half, you're only allowed 13 points as well. And
And
the
that
only reason why you allow that
Right.
exactly. The only reason why you allow that is because Sims turns it over and you have a short field. You know, there's nothing you can really do there. And then the second half, like you said, the wheels fell off. If you're a Nebraska fan, you shouldn't be too mad with what this season has in store because it's not going to be good for you. But, like, you should be excited for the future because I think Matt Rule is going to bring in people and it's going to be solid. I am excited for what Nebraska is going to become, but it's not there yet. You know, yeah, I think they'll be interesting, and I think they'll give teams some scares, but it's nothing. It's not going to be anything crazy. I like your 4 wins. I think I'd be a little more confident in say 5 wins, but I don't see them being in a bowl game. I agree with you there.
Yeah.
So Big Ten West again. That's kind of talking about the Big Ten West. Those were the main games. I could talk about Purdue, Virginia Tech, but I talked a lot about Purdue, and of course my prediction was right. Drew thought they'd lose to Virginia Tech, and of course they won. So Hudson Card looked really good. They're going to be interesting. Again, I put them on the Minnesota tier, kind of. I think they'll be around there. I think they're a little better than Minnesota. I kind of regret picking Minnesota when they play each other. But because I really like Hudson Card. I think he's a very good quarterback. And they got a solid defense. They started clicking and putting some pieces together. But Virginia Tech's also really bad. They're not good.
Right.
So, and that was a really weird game because I don't know if you know this, but the game started at 12 and then it was delayed because of thunderstorms. And the game actually concluded at 8 o'clock. That's when it finished.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
crazy. Crazy storms on the East Coast around North Carolina and the Virginia Tech area. So, I mean, that was just a weird game. I think Purdue could have won by more points if the game just, like, happened because they came out and were up 10-0 immediately. So, like, they were ready to play that game, and it was a good win for them. But, you know, again, I kind of have the middle of the row, maybe, like, lurking near the top, but not there. Do you kind of agree with that?
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to take a little break, and then we'll get to the Big Ten East and give you guys who we think is going to make it out of the Big Ten.
Hello. This is Giovanni Mosheri. You might have heard me a couple times on Jake's Takes. I am the sports media director of Oakland University's campus radio station, WXOU, and I've been the host for about 2 years of a weekly sports show called The Jomo Show, where we cover all of Oakland University athletics, including a weekly update on scores and highlights, as well as interviews with athletes or those otherwise involved in athletics. You can listen to The Jomo Show live on WXOU Thursdays at 6, or you can tune in to me afterwards on Spotify. It's The Jomo Show.
All right. Welcome back into the show. And we're going to get into some Big Ten East talk. And we're going to talk, let's start with Michigan. We got to talk about my Wolverines. I haven't really gone too far in depth on them in the podcast too much. I talked about the Jim Harbaugh suspension stuff, but I don't want to talk about that anymore. Let's get into some football business. I want to talk about that. So Michigan's starting out 2-0. And they got a big win against UNLV this week, 35-7 in this game. And I'm going to tell you this, J.J. McCarthy looked really, really good in this game. It was unbelievable. He started out the game 13 for 13 passing, and was just incredible. Like, this guy was not making any mistakes. It was unbelievable to watch. He ended the game 22 for 25 passing, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he sat the whole second half pretty much. I mean, like, he was unbelievable to start this game. Roman Wilson added in two receiving touchdowns. He had 4 receptions, 89 yards. Was great in this game. Cornelius Johnson also helped on the receiving end, 5 receptions, 82 yards. And kind of the main story of this game, just so everybody knows, is that Blake Corum's back. He looked really good in this game. He had 15 carries for 80 yards. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. And, I mean, a lot of people were like, we're not sure how Blake Corum's going to come back, but he really showed up in this game and looked really good. I'm very happy to see it for Blake Corum. I mean, this guy was unbelievable last year, and it was tough to see him get injured before the Ohio State game, not be able to play. And, this guy's an unbelievable dude, so I'm really happy for him. Jonah, talk to me a little bit about where you see Michigan going into the rest of the year, pretty much.
I love this team. I liked them to beat Ohio State last year. Wasn't surprised when it happened. And then you look at they're bringing back the majority of that team. I mean, it's unfair the amount of guys they're bringing back. And then you add on to that, they had one of the top O lines in the country last year. They said that wasn't good enough. They hit the portal and brought in more guys. I mean, they'll have probably the best O line in the country this year. JJ's going to be in the Heisman race. It's going to hurt him that he's not playing the second half of these early games when you got guys like Sanders putting up 500 yards week one.
Yeah.
But but he'll be there for the Heisman if Michigan wins the Big Ten for sure. Their defense is, I think, even better than last year. I think last year was a little overrated, I'm not going to lie. But they're bringing back the majority of guys. I love this team. We'll get into the one game I think they might lose later, but I think they take care of Ohio State again. I think it's championship or bust this year for Michigan.
Yeah,
Corum's as good as it gets. The fact he came back is unbelievable. That shouldn't happen.
Like, looking at this team, they're so deep. Like, so deep. I think this is one of the deepest teams we've seen in the Big Ten in a while. It kind of leads into, like, they're like one of those Ohio State teams that are just so well put together. And, it's really awesome to see. I mean, like, I've been a Michigan fan for so long, and this is clearly the best team that Michigan's had since I've been a Michigan fan. And it's unbelievable to say. Like, I'm not taking these years for granted because it was horrible being a Michigan fan for a while. It just was because there's so much expectation, and then we were just sick of winning 10 games, which made no sense to me because I was happy winning 10 games because I was used to these 6-win seasons, and I was done with it. So I'm happy with this. This Michigan team is really good, and I'm excited to see what it leads to. Looking at this schedule, again, it's not a great schedule. That's what everybody says when you see the schedule. They got Bowling Green next week, and then they start that Big Ten schedule. Some of the road games, just so you kind of get a look at it, you got at Minnesota, which could be interesting. Again, PJ Fleck, you got that. You got, that Michigan kind of rivalry thing because PJ Fleck was at Western Michigan. That could be interesting there. And then you got at Michigan State, again, that's just a rivalry game, so Michigan State's always going to make that a tough game. And then at Penn State is the one that everybody is scared of and is going to be an unbelievable game. So those are your tough road games, and then you got Ohio State. That's the last game of the season at home. So, again, like, the schedule does pick up, and it will end up being better. But with the way this Michigan team is looking right now and the way JJ has been playing, I think JJ has really taken a step up and has been improved, and they're starting to use him in the passing game more, which is, I think, what we needed. I'm very excited to see what this Michigan team can be, and it's going to be very interesting in the future. Jonah, you want to move on to the other teams?
Yeah, I agree. I honestly think this Michigan team, I think they're too good to be upset by a Big Ten team. Like, I wanted to see, I was hoping at the start of the year it'd be possible. I don't see an Iowa team upsetting them. I don't think Michigan State can do it with everything they got going on. They just don't. You still need a good team to upset a team like Michigan. Michigan just has to take care of take care of business against Penn State and Ohio State, really.
Yeah. I mean, those are the two big games. And,
Yep.
like let's just get into these teams to kind of start now. Let's start with Ohio State because I think they're the one with the most questions right now. They had a solid win this week. They beat Youngstown State 35-7, which kind of funny that they're playing Youngstown State because Youngstown State is in the Horizon League in college basketball. So they're one of Oakland's rivals. So kind of cool to see them on the football field, which is kind of interesting. But the fact that it was 35-7 against a team that plays in the Horizon League for basketball. Not great. Not great. I'm just saying.
Youngstown State also drove down the field on them once.
Exactly. It was
Yeah.
just like I expected Ohio State to win this game 77-0. I just did. That's what Ohio State normally does with these teams. And like looking at the stats, it looks like they played a great game. Kyle McCord, 14 for 20, 258 yards, 3 touchdowns. Devin Brown came in for some snaps. He went 7 for 13, 101 yards. That's solid for him coming in and just playing a little bit. And then Travion Henderson, 5 carries, 56 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's great. Marvin Harrison was unbelievable. 7 receptions, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. Great game there. And then Emeka Egbuka was really good too. Just looking at this Ohio State team, I just listed so many names. And again, the quarterbacks, they've been the question. But the receivers and the running backs, I said, they've been there a long time, and we know what they can do. They're fantastic. They're really good players. So it's kind of shocking to me that Ohio State has all these weapons, and we have so many questions on them. And it's kind of because of the quarterbacks. McCord hasn't been good this year. He just hasn't. He didn't look great in their Week 1 game against Indiana. They only won 23-3 in that game. Not great there. And then Devin Brown just doesn't look good when he has the ball. He doesn't look comfortable. He's more of a running quarterback, and I don't like that he's number 3. If you're a quarterback, or not number 3, he's number 33. If you're a quarterback, do not wear number 33. I'm sorry. I just hate seeing that. It's not good. But like getting back to Devin Brown, I just don't think he's comfortable. I really don't. He's not making good reads, and he's running and doing some stuff. He only had 6 carries for 9 yards in this game. Like, it's like, okay, you're supposed to be a runner, but you're not even doing that aspect, and you played half the game. So it's like, with Ohio State, it's a lot of questions, and I just think they should be looking way better than they have so far. What do you think, Jonah?
I agree. I mean, this isn't the Ohio State team of that they usually have. They usually have elite quarterbacks, elite receivers, elite offense. This year, they only really have elite receivers, and that's not going to play if your quarterbacks aren't there. Kyle McCord, it looks like he's winning the starting job, but he's not going to get the job done. The thing about Ohio State is their defense is, I mean, they usually have a mid defense, right? Like 20 to 40th in the nation, honestly. But it's always compensated by their elite level offense. But since it doesn't look like they have that offense this year, they're going to be good. They're going to be top 25, probably top 15. But I don't see them having much of a chance against Michigan, or even I think Penn State could pull out a significant victory there too, maybe 10 to 14 points, honestly. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this Ohio State team this year.
Yeah,
I think it's Ryan.
And yeah, like looking at this schedule, it's a tough schedule. This is easily the toughest schedule. They play at Notre Dame in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's going to be such a tough game. Sam Hartman's looking unbelievable, and I talked about Notre Dame on a past podcast. They're really tough, and I think I wish they were fully in the ACC. Because now that Clemson's like not the for real team in the ACC, they play Clemson, which is cool, but they don't play Florida State, which sucks. And Notre Dame's playing Ohio State. Like, it's just going to be such a tough game to go into Notre Dame and win that game. It's going to be so tough to do that, So I just don't know if Ohio State can win that game. And then you also play home against Penn State, who's dying for revenge after a crazy close game last year. And then you play at Michigan, who in Michigan, if they win every game before that, there's no way they're losing that game. It's just the truth, especially if Ohio State's like not amped and ready to play that game.
Yeah.
It'd be tough. And if Day loses, I think you're right. If Day loses 2 of these games, he could be done because Ohio State's that
Sure.
demanding of their coaches. And Day, I think, is a fantastic coach, but it seems like he skipped a year with the quarterbacks, and it's the first time we're saying it with Ohio State.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, you remember the year they went 3 quarterbacks deep and won the championship. It's not. It's
Yep.
not that type of year for them this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not the same Ohio State we're used to. And they also play at Wisconsin, too. This is, I
Yeah.
think, clearly the hardest Big Ten schedule because, like, these are some tough. I'm keep looking at this schedule. They play at Purdue as well in a late game. It's like, dude, like, this just keeps getting harder and harder. So, it's the worst year for this kind of schedule.
Right.
And they just got to figure it out. They got to figure it out, and I'm hoping they will, especially for that Michigan game near the end of the season. But, it's definitely going to be interesting, and this team definitely has the most questions for sure. All right, let's move into Penn State a little bit. Penn State had a big win against Delaware. I didn't watch most of this game, but they won 63-7 against Delaware, and like Drew Aller's unbelievable. This guy's got so much control in the pocket. I talked about it a lot on my Week 1 reaction show when they beat West Virginia last week, and they looked great doing it. Katron Allen was unbelievable in this game. 19 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. Nicholas Singleton had 3 touchdowns, 47 yards rushing. He looked great. The questions for Penn State on the offensive end is probably the receiving. Like, will there be a receiver that steps up for Drew Aller? And in the early stages, we're seeing like guys like Tyler Warren really step up, and a lot of people like Dante Cephas this year. They're hoping he can step up. So that's going to be interesting, and I think I'm always going to be really watching that because I think that's really your only question on Penn State because their O-line's been looking pretty solid. Again, West Virginia's no juggernaut or anything like that. So I guess we'll see there. But I want to talk about this defense because this defense is unbelievable. They got a great D-line. Their secondary is unreal. I think Michigan and Penn State's defenses are 2 of the best in the country. They're flat out unbelievable. And I think it's neck and neck for who you think is a better defense. These guys are just unbelievable athletes. And I'm just really excited for this Penn State team. I think they're unbelievable. What do you think?
I love this Penn State team. I mean, their defense is incredible. Their secondary, I just saw a list with them ranked at 6. I think they could be higher. That same list had Michigan at 2, Iowa at 5. I think Penn State could be as high as 3 secondary-wise. Their D-line is incredible. I mean, you're taking an elite-level defense combined with a great offense, and then they're just a hungry team. They've been in the hunt for the East for on and off the last 5 years, especially last year. I mean, they're knocking on the door, and this team has what it takes to get it done. It's just, can they do it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. Looking at their schedule, it's not as tough as Ohio State, but next week they're going to Illinois. Again, I talked about Illinois. It just doesn't look great. I think Penn State kind of handles their business there easily. And then you got home against Iowa the next week. Again, big matchup there.
Yeah,
Do you think the Hawkeyes have any chance? I can't remember what you said earlier.
for sure. I mean, I think you look at their last 5 games against Penn State. I don't have the stats, but I'm just thinking. I'm guessing it's been at least 3, probably 4 wins against Penn State.
Okay.
They've really had their way
Okay.
against Penn State. It's always a defensive battle, 1 possession win. Yeah, I mean, Penn State can't sleep on that game. They
Yeah.
can't. I
Yeah.
think they'll take care of business at Happy Valley, but that'll be a true test for both teams. We'll leave that game knowing exactly who Iowa is and exactly who Penn State is.
Yeah, I mean, like Iowa's just got to play it in their style of football, and then they like definitely could be in that game and maybe even get it done. Like if Cade takes care of the ball and they play their style of defense, that could be interesting for sure.
For sure.
Looking at the rest of the schedule, you got Northwestern, which is dub. Then you got Massachusetts, which is a dub, and then you got at Ohio State, and that one again. very interesting. We just talked about how there's a lot of questions with Ohio State. The thing is with this Penn State team is they were that close to beating Ohio State last year, like so close. It was a fantastic game, and that's an Ohio State team with C.J. Stroud. You know,
Yeah. Like,
like this team is just unbelievable. They're very deep, and I think this is just a way better team. I think Drew Aller. I love how much control he has in the line of scrimmage. When you had Sean Clifford, I liked Sean Clifford, but I didn't trust him completely. And now when you have a guy like Drew Aller, I have a lot of trust in him. I think he's just so calm in the pocket and so composed. And this is after one full game of me watching him play football. And I was like, oh, I trust this guy. And that's unbelievable to say with such a young quarterback because he'll be back next year and he'll probably be better, you know? And when you have that kind of trust level, and I think the team has that kind of trust level in a guy like Drew Aller, it's just scary. And you don't see that at Ohio State. And that's why it's like, okay, I'm giving the edge to Penn State because I already like Penn State's defense better than I like Ohio State's defense. We didn't get into Ohio State's defense too much, but I don't love their secondary. And if you're looking at the lines, the Ohio State's D line is good, but it's no Penn State's, and their offensive line hasn't looked good at all. Ohio State's. So you're going against the defensive line like Penn State. That's going to be a little rough, you know. So looking at that matchup, I would like Penn State in that matchup. What do you think if you're looking at that matchup?
I 100% agree. I mean, it was a great game last year, super close, and then you have an Ohio State team. I think anyone who's seen them play would agree they've significantly fell off. And then you got a Penn State team where we don't know exactly how much better they are yet, but I think everyone agrees they're better. So I think Penn State wins that game handily.
Yeah.
10 points, maybe.
Oh wow, you like that 10 points. Yeah, I just got to
I
see
like
a
this
little.
Penn State team, man. I like them.
I just got to see a little more of both teams before I go with
Yeah,
these
yeah, for
points.
sure.
You know, like I didn't
Again,
really
they'll know
want to.
better after Penn State versus Iowa. That'll really show
Yeah,
who they are.
yeah. I like that take. I really think that's going to be a great game, and we'll see. So looking at the rest of Penn State's schedule, you got home against Indiana, win, at Maryland, win, and
Yep.
then Michigan. And Michigan's the big one. You know, if you take care of Ohio State, if you take care of Iowa, then you got Michigan, and that's going to be pretty much the game for the Big Ten East. I think we
Right.
both think. And again, you got a great advantage playing that at home. And I actually see it's not going to be a night game. This is going to be a 12 o'clock game. They've set the time for this game. This will be a 12 o'clock game, so that's very interesting. I think that helps out Michigan a little bit, so it's not like a whiteout game. But you know, Penn State fans are still going to be ridiculous for this
Yep.
game, and it's going to be fun. I think these two teams are pretty evenly matched, and it'll be a quarterback duel with, I think, the two best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. What do you think?
This could be one of the best football games of the year. I mean, it's
I'm
going to be
hoping.
absolutely electric. But my take is, it's week 11, November 11th, Happy Valley. You know I'm big on Penn State. I think all around this Michigan team is better, but I think in Happy Valley, Penn State pulls it off. I mean,
Wow.
they've been knocking at the door for so long. I think they shock everyone, win a super close game, and then go on to win the Big Ten.
Woo. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that take. I like that take a lot. Yeah, I don't know if Penn State's beating Michigan. I don't. I think
That's fair.
I'm
That's
gonna
fair.
roll with Michigan. It might be the homer in me talking, but I don't care. I also think this Michigan team is a little better.
They're,
Um,
they're so good.
Michigan's offense is just unbelievable. I would take Michigan's O line over any O line in the country. I also think JJ's taken that step up where it's just going to be difficult to stop him. I think he's a little bit better than Drew Aller. I trust him just a little bit more, and I trust Michigan's backs more. I do. I trust Blake Corum. I trust
I agree.
Donovan Edwards. And like Penn State's backs are really good. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, they're both really, really good running backs. But I trust Michigan just on every side almost more. I think the only thing I trust a little more on the Penn State side is their secondary. I think that's it. I think that's the only thing. And they're both very similar teams, but I gotta roll with Michigan. I do. I think this is their year, and they're hungry. They are hungry to make it to the next
Very
step.
fair. Very fair.
But that's the only loss I have Penn State having. I think they roll through everything else and
You
kind of
think
take
you think they
control.
could sneak into the playoffs if that's their one loss?
I don't, just because their schedule's not good enough. I think the
Yeah.
only way the Big Ten was able to have two teams in was if Ohio State was for real. But I don't think they're going to be for
Mhm.
real. I think Ohio State's going to lose to Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan. I think they're going to lose all
Okay.
three of those games. I'm not sure if they'll fire Ryan Day. I
Mm.
think there's going to be a lot of talk about it and a lot of fans wanting it. But I think Ryan Day is going to pull out a move in the offseason that gets everybody back on his side. I think he's going to go after the best quarterback transfer and get him. Like I
Interesting.
could see like the Sam Hartman of last year going to Ohio State, something like that. Like if Spencer Radler had a year of eligibility and wanted to do it, or something like that. Someone like that could bring like that energy. Like okay, we're gonna be here next year. It'll be okay. So I think it's gonna be tough for the Big Ten to have two teams. My prediction was not good. I don't know if you know my prediction for the playoff, but my playoff prediction was Georgia 1, Michigan 2, and then I had Clemson 3 and
Oh,
LSU 4. So it was really rough my first week with LSU and Clemson
yeah.
losing, but it now like I'm not going to take credit for this pick, but I've changed it to where I still have LSU in at 4. Um, I think they're gonna. I think they're still really good and really
That's
tough.
bold. Bold.
But I also think that the 3 seed is going to be Texas. I'm a high on Texas. I think they're going
Wow.
to be in. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. That's what I
I would
morphed
love to
it
see
into.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any teams that? Well, first of all, you have Penn State as your Big Ten champion. So
I
who do you
do. I
think?
do.
Who do you think? Who else is going to be in the playoff then?
Oh man, I haven't thought too much about playoffs yet. So obviously we got Penn State. Gotta
Okay.
have Georgia.
Yep.
We got two spots left. Um, you think we could sneak a second SEC team in there?
You probably could 100%. I mean, I have two. I have LSU as well
Yeah.
in there.
I'm not sure. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
see
tough. I
Alabama.
kind of put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
It's tough. Um, how I kind of did it was like, I don't think Bama's there, especially with the loss to Texas, and I also think LSU's better than them. That's kind of how I
Sure.
put it. I was really high on Clemson in the offseason. You could go easy and just pick Florida State if you think they're gonna run the table, which they might. That
Yeah. I
wouldn't be a
think
bad pick.
I'm gonna throw in a USC and a Notre Dame. I
Okay,
guess those are my final two.
USC Notre Dame. I
Because
like that. I like
I
that.
hate how they do it, but Notre Dame they schedule perfectly to make the playoffs. I mean, all they have to do is win one of their two big games,
The one
maybe two
interesting
and a
game
beater.
The one interesting game is Notre Dame plays USC, which would be very interesting.
Mm.
So Notre
Yeah,
Dame has actually scheduled kind of tough this year. I've kind of
but I mean,
explored it a little bit
Clemson
on
shouldn't
the
be too hard
podcast.
for them,
Yeah, I mean
and
Clemson
Ohio State's
again.
very beatable. So if they
Yeah,
lose to USC, I still think they could slip in at 4.
and now apparently like Duke's good. So like looking at this
Right,
schedule,
right.
Notre Dame plays home against Ohio State. They play at Duke. They play home against USC, and then they play at Clemson. Those are probably like the main games where it's
Hmm.
like, oh, those are like good games. And then like USC, they got the tough Pac-12. Like it's so tough for me to pick a Pac-12 team because the Pac-12 is so loaded, you know. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm just so happy to have college football back. It's
Oh,
gonna be some exciting stuff. Jonah, thank you so much for joining the
for
podcast, man.
sure, man, for
Yeah,
sure.
this was a lot of fun. We
Yeah,
dove deep into the Big Ten, and dude, it's gonna be interesting. I'm pumped for this Big
oh
Ten
yeah.
season. It's gonna be.
Hopefully the takes age a little better this time. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I think it's a little easier in college football,
Right.
especially when
Oh,
we're
for
like
sure.
placing it and we've seen some action a little bit.
Right.
So like, and especially since we did one conference, we know this conference. So hopefully
Right.
we
Right.
got this right. Um, But yeah, Jonah, thank you so much for joining the show, man. This
Anytime,
was a
man.
lot of fun.
Anytime.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. But that's going to wrap up this episode of Jake's Takes. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is a little bit of a long one, but please bear with us. Listen through the whole thing. If you got here, like, subscribe on the YouTube, follow the page on Spotify, or whatever you got to do. Do whatever you got to do. But we're going to be out of here, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.